Hey, it's been a while since I made a video. I'm DurchBurch, and if you've been watching my channel for a while, I'm sure that you're aware that I do a lot of pixel art. And by a lot of pixel art, I don't mean a lot of pixel art, but it's the majority of the art that I make, and I don't make a lot of art, so I'd say, like, I do a decent amount of pixel art. But, you know, it's been a while since I really walked through my full process when I'm working on a sprite, and at this point, anything that I've done that was a full video is probably outdated, and other than that, it's just bits and pieces and some live streams where I would be spriting. So I figured, hey, why don't I go ahead, make a nice video for this, and kind of give people a chance to get an understanding of what my process is and how I approach my pixel art. So, yeah, cut to 3 months later. That's roughly how long it's taken me to make this video. And I have remembered now why I haven't made a video like this in a while. It takes a lot of time, and I do not have as much time as I used to. But anyways, that's enough beating around the bush. I'm just going to dive into the process of making this sprite. So what you see here is effectively my first draft. I'm just kind of roughing out the body shape, putting on some lines to help position facial features, and then roughing out those facial features. You know, I'm just kind of like adding in some spines here for like this mohawk effect on this dorsal fin. So I'm adding in the pectoral fins and these little extra fins that are kind of like feet. I felt that this dorsal fin looked a little too much like a fin and not enough like a mohawk. So I'm kind of going through and flipping those front spikes to kind of emphasize the fact that this is a mohawk as well. And then I kind of tweaked the pose a little bit, refined some of the features, and I'm just kind of cleaning up some messier parts. And now you can see I'm just kind of brainstorming some names to kind of wrap this up. So here I am working on the second draft. I don't do this for every sprite that I do, but I felt that this design wasn't quite where I wanted it to be when I finished up my first draft, so I was like, screw it, I'm doing a second draft. So you can see I'm now using some stuff. This is something I do not normally do. I'm learning more things as I live, I guess, around artists on social media, and I'm slapping in a rough line of action, which again, not something I normally do, but it's something that I've heard is very useful, and so I'm kind of using this to get, you know, effectively a feel for the flow of the pose to help lay the groundwork for it. Now I'm kind of roughing out the head placement, size, and all of that. I'm adding a bit more of that facial guide just to make sure that I put the features in consistent places. Now I'm just kind of drawing in facial features. I'm really trying to emphasize the mouth shape. I feel like that's something that I need to have be more unique for this design, because honestly, it felt a bit generic without having something really pronounced and a bit angular. So now I'm adding some what I'm calling guide rings. I don't know if they have a technical term. Again, I'm not like an artist. I'm not classically trained. I'm just doing things that feel right and that are partially influenced by other artists I've seen. But yeah, I'm calling these guide rings. They're just kind of to help me keep in mind that three-dimensional nature of the body. If this is not a flat creature, this thing has some depth, and this is just helping me get an understanding of where that depth is, how to pose it with that in mind. So now I'm just kind of positioning the fins. I'm trying to replicate a bit of the pose from the first sketch, you know, but I do want to give it more gravitas, if you will. Now it is officially mohawk time. You know, adding in those spines, getting this to look nice and mohawk-like and not fin-like. And I feel like the body is a bit long here, so I'm like, I gotta erase that, shorten this up, and then kind of clean it all up. Alrighty, so now we can get into the spriting. You know, I try to start by, you know, getting rid of the background. So here I'm trying to select the paper color, but I keep getting the inside of the drawing. So this is when I start tweaking some aspects of it. You can see I've upped the contrast, and I've added like a little line to kind of fill that line work. That makes it easier for me to select the paper without erasing the entire inside of, you know, the piece of art. So now, because I'm still feeling the body's a little wonky here, I'm gonna use the perspective tool to kind of shift the body and kind of reposition it a bit, and also shorten it up from a visual standpoint. So now you can see I'm kind of establishing the size of the sprite within the overall image itself. I work in 64 by 64, but before I scale it down, I usually try to get the final artwork to rest in a square that's going to be the right proportion for what I want. So now you can see I'm adding in my usual background for contrast. I usually pick a color that's going to stand out, but also that won't hurt my eyes to look at it for a long period of time. And now I'm kind of starting to rough out the silhouette of the head. So here you can see me kind of roughing in the facial features. The mouth was giving me some trouble just because, you know, when you're working in pixel art, you have to kind of work with what you can as far as the size of the pixels go. And they can get in the way sometimes. So when you're trying to do subtle curves or angles like these structures in the mouth have, can be difficult, but you just kind of have to feel it out and make sure that you kind of get the right feeling for what you're looking for. And the only way to really get that sometimes is to just kind of, as I said, feel it out, put something down. If it doesn't feel right, tweak it until it does. And the eyes, honestly, here were giving me some trouble too. So to kind of make them a little easier to do and also make them stand out more, I quite literally decided to have them bulge out a bit. So now the eyes are sticking out instead of being recessed into the face like a normal eye might be. Here you can see I'm kind of starting to make the body silhouette, kind of working in the fins, and I've kind of opted to take them in a spikier direction. I feel like that matches that mohawk dorsal fin a bit more, but also, again, gives it a little bit something more unique. Gives this design something that doesn't just feel generic fish, but instead feels like something rocky and punky and just overall matches its vibe a lot more. So this is another part that was a little tricky. I was trying to get the leg and foot to have a shape that kind of matches the initial pose concept with, you know, one a little bit up and one that's resting down on the ground as if it's kind of stumbling around. So here I'm starting to shape the spines of the mohawk and then, you know, adding the fins in between them, which is a significantly trickier thing to do in pixel art than it is to do drawing by hand. Again, pixels have a minimum size. It makes it difficult to do these like subtle effects that you know, here I only have like a couple pixels to work with in any given fin between those spines. So it definitely makes it a bit tricky. So now that I have all of that done, I'm kind of blocking in some temporary colors, kind of working out what the shading's going to be and the lighting for the body, slowly working that in, getting an idea of how this is going to interact with light in like a three-dimensional space. So here you can see I'm starting to add some variations to the face's outline colors. My friends and I tend to call this anti-aliasing, but technically the way I tend to do it is not actual anti-aliasing. That would be if I was doing it to like single pixels, as far as I understand it. This is more so just varying the outline colors so that the outlines also interact with lighting. You know, generally I try to still have it be darker than the color that it's next to, but also, you know, lighter than the rest of the eye. So here I'm kind of incorporating some more shading into the face, and I'm slapping some of that shading onto the fins as well. You know, again, they're in a three-dimensional space, and honestly, things like fins tend to give me a lot of trouble because it can be difficult to shade something that's mostly flat. But again, it's one of those things that you just have to kind of get a feel for as you go. You know, be mindful of, you know, how light interacts with things like that, and don't be afraid to take some like artistic liberties with the lighting and just do something that feels good, even if it's not necessarily right. So again, I wasn't fully happy with the eyes here, so I came back to them, and I like the idea of them looking in opposite directions, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm just making them look in opposite directions, kind of giving it this doofier vibe. And now that I have most of those details done, it's time for me to start finalizing the colors. I actually almost forgot to shade the dorsal spines, so it's a good thing I noticed that while I was doing this. But when it comes to incorporating final colors into a piece, I usually go back through every single one and make sure that it's the color I want it to be. And I also add some variation to the hues and the saturations, which is typically called hue shifting when you do it to the hues. But generally I try to make shadows and outlines more saturated, and I try to lean their hues towards blue for the most part. So that's what I'm kind of doing here. So with the pose and the eyes, you know, this is kind of giving me the vibe of someone that's a bit intoxicated. So at this point, I figured I would add some poison to its mouth as I'm doing these finishing touches, almost as if it was kind of drunk on its own poison, and that was having an effect on it. And now that I have all that, it's time for me to just work on, you know, a shiny. So, you know, when I work on shiny colors, I tend to do it in the sort of somewhat traditional way of the only colors that stay the same are true white and true black. If you don't have true white and you don't have true black, go crazy, go wild, pick a different color for everything. But I am a little bit limited by the fact that the eyes are sharing that lightest skin color. It's also used actually on the teeth in their shadows. So the lightest skin color has to always be close enough to the eyes and the teeth that are white. And just for a little bit more fun, I decided to mix up the fins and spines with a bit of a vibrant green to go from there. But yeah, that's Stomble. Again, it has been like a 3-month process for me to make this video, so I'm really happy that it's finally done. I can't say that I can guarantee that I'll be doing more of these anytime soon, as it does take me quite a while. I just have to find the time to be able to record audio and to be able to do the other steps in the process. But I'm pretty happy with how this sprite turned out overall. I think it's a really fun concept, and you know, it's just it's a unique one, and really did challenge me in some ways from both the drawing aspects and the spriting aspects. So I'm pretty happy with this. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video of mine. I almost tried to do my live stream outro, but I can't really do that here. This isn't live. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this. You know, it was a lot of work, but I'm, again, pretty happy with how it turned out. So I'm gonna go do human things as humans do, and you probably should too. Again, thank you so much. Goodbye.